Okay. Hello, everyone watching on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in on such short notice. This is one of those streams where I felt like I needed an outlet after having stumbled on current events and getting baited into being angry about the latest nonsense that I guess the left is up to. And I figured I'd air my grievances live for the world to see. Hello, Bingle in the chat. I see you. Yes, I used one of the songs that you posted. I hope that's all right. If you're listening to this, Vingul on YouTube is posting a lot of interesting folk and other similar artistic works. So you should probably check that out. Okay, I am also joined on very short notice by Luddic Path, my fellow Norwegian.
Hello, can you hear me?
I would like you to confirm that you can all hear Luddic Path.
So this is like a call-in show, like you had in the 90s, almost.
Pretty much, yes.
Post in the chat if you can hear me.
Let's see here. We'll give it a moment for the chat. Yep, people do.
Yep, they do.
Can hear. Yep. Okay, I will jump on over to my browser here for a moment. And so the thing that has gotten me up in arms this time is the issue of we call it a radical gender theory and its introduction into Norway. And it's been a bit of a slow burn. It is something that has been in the background for a while, and I know that in certain areas there's been local let's call them disagreements over an introduction of a third sex, as an illegal third sex, but also in general very radical gender theory in general being introduced to schools and kindergartens, and it's all being done in a way that sort of wishfully thinking that these things don't happen here, but obviously they do, because we live in the same democratic neoliberal regime as everyone else. It's something that is not introduced via law, or it's even, some would argue, against the law as it is today. And it's nothing that any parent has any say in. There are NGOs that are working for a homosexual agenda, and they have influence over teachers and the learning plans that are developed without any legal or democratic say. These are not elected officials or anything like that. These are
I will actually interject a little bit on that, Walrus. Not to counter signal, but to mimic some of the things that academic agent says. Society is downstream from law, and there have actually been changes to the Norwegian law that have just been progressively happening since like the 2000s that have contributed to getting us here. So I don't have like the full prep here, but I'm currently reading like Kjell Skartveit's book Normløst. That is basically this. He is like this Christian conservative Christian guy who's kind of documented. He has like this 400-page book documenting all of the changes that have been going on since the 90s in terms of both the the gender sexual revolution and like the gay marriage and so on. So
that's a very good point. And you're a bit ahead of me, because it was something I wanted to introduce later, the concept of, in a sense, this is something new, but in the other sense, yes, this is downstream from law ultimately. But we can get back to that. But it's a good, for those who tune out early, don't be fooled. This isn't something new in the sense that it just came out of nowhere. A sip of water here. I am also very uncomfortable right now because our cat has decided to nest in between me and my monitor, and I don't want to disturb her sleep. Obviously, that's bad luck. So imagine me like a typical James Bond villain stroking the cat menacingly as we go through this. Anyway, my point is that it's surfaced recently. These things have surfaced through various NGOs influencing Norwegian schools without any form of consent from either parents or voters. And on top of this, there's now an official investigation from the government into a third sex as a legal third sex, meaning that, say, on your passport, there will be either the option of being male, being female, or being, I don't even know what they're going to call it, unspecified. Do you have any idea?
I have no clue what they're going to call it. I think Northern On gets into this. How do you rationalize this stuff in Norwegian? Because there's no word for gender. It is like sex and gender is the same thing.
Yeah, sex is a borrowed
So I mean, of
word
course,
from English.
we could go into a little bit deeper, like some of the quote unquote rationale that they have before it. I don't know what it's going to be, like the hen. That's the word they're using now for the third gender.
Probably.
I don't know why they would sort of have a third one. They could just add like 50 genders, like they've done some other places. You have a video of the kind of psycho Espenester Pirelli who talks about like there's 7 genders. And he's like one of these premier, gender specialist psychologists. So why not 7? Why not like 100? I don't know what they're trying to achieve here. Like they seem to just be going for anything that can push this agenda further. Like any victory they can get. Like if they can move the goalposts a little bit, if they can.
Yeah, it feels
they
very
can just
much
throw
like
the ball a little bit further.
Like a multi-prong attack. They're just, they're spreading themselves thin and trying to poke holes rather than going for the kill. But once you get a wedge in there, it's gonna open it wide, I think. So the first article I have about this, and I know there's a couple of Norwegians in the chat. If you have any other resources, feel free to post them on the Matrix channel that's linked in the description. For the English viewers, I have, of course, Google translated the articles, and we'll be trying to keep this relevant for you guys as well. The first article that I want to cover here is just the labor minister that is pictured here. This is the official sort of start of the investigation that happened a couple of days ago, but no, actually that happened before Christmas was the start. But the debate has been going for the past week regarding this. So this is when she announced that they were going for the investigation into the, as it says here, the consequences of introducing a third gender category in passports and other identification documents, reported by a gay paper or magazine, I should say. So the report formed the basis for promoting a possible bill on an optional legal third sex. How long this will take is currently unknown. Then just some boilerplate journalism here. But this isn't very interesting. It's just that I wanted to highlight that it started around Christmas, and it's been heating up as a debate over the past month and into the past week here in Norway. And so here's from one of the papers that we discussed on the Nordic Media Stream the other day. Yesterday, actually. Sorry. And this is a full-on debate kind of article. So the journalist here has gathered up multiple, let's call them experts. I don't know. I don't know about all of them, but some of these people are doctors and psychologists and I don't even know if it's something you can say, but sexologists. YouTube is probably flagging me for saying that. And so the headline is that research indicates that the majority are comfortable with their biological sex. And that's a quote from one of the people. What is true in the debate about gender identity? We tried a fact check, but it turned out to be difficult, as most fact checks tend to do, or tend to be.
So this is the marketplace of ideas at work.
This is the marketplace of ideas at work. Here we're going to see the acceptable range of opinions on
top,
this.
the number one democracy in the world.
Yes, certainly.
According to the index, number one democracy, marketplace of ideas. Tax dollars hard at work.
Yep. Before we head in, let's see if there's any more chats. Okay, I did get a message from someone who might have shared any relevant stuff. Nope. Okay. A proposal from the Minister of Culture and Gender Equality, which, by the way, that's the official title these days. A proposal from the Minister of Culture and Gender Equality, Annette Trettebergstuen, has set fire to the already hot debate on gender identity. Some actors have gathered in an appeal on the internet called Yes to the Bisexual Model, No to Radical Gender Ideology. And we're going to take a look at their mission statement after this. Over 20,000
bisexual model.
The bisexual model. And I think this is a case of them. Actually, I can just jump over to it because I have it here. We can read this later, but I think this is an attempt of it's a bit of counter jihad in that sense. They're trying to use the left's language against them. To say that they want a bisexual as in two gender model, bi as in two, not a radical gender ideology.
Well, that's interesting. So they have to have a word for that now. It's you can't take it for granted. It makes me think of like the sort of when people talk about the heliocentric model of the world,
right?
Like yes. the sort of flat earthers, but
the helio, yeah. Okay. How long are we going on for? Tardiness equals 9 minutes. Don't we have lots of time, Rolling Doggerland. And this is an indulgence. I'm doing this for fun. This isn't for learning. So, okay. In this case, we have talked to some actors to answer 5 allegations or assertions. I think this is a translation error, to try and show how difficult this debate is. So, the panel. A psychologist specialist, leader of the and the spokesperson behind the Yes to the Bisexual Model. So this is the leader of this is the person who's heading up this petition. So, of course, firmly in the camp of anti third gender. And then there's the Authorized Sexologist from the Norwegian Association for Clinical Sexology and head of the Health Station for Gender and Sexuality, Oslo. So a professional Coomer woman. And then you have...
It's sexology, just for the... I don't know if it's the same thing in other countries. I mean, Norway, they're usually quite heavy on credentialism. I mean, you know, in the United States, you can get like a realtor license by like taking a few courses, and you could get a chiropractor degree pretty easily. But in Norway, like, even, you know, you'd think that sexology would be more credentialed, but it really isn't. Like, you can just take a few courses and give yourself the title sexologist. It's not a protected title. So any sort of insane person can just call themselves a sort of sex expert, and then is apparently qualified to give advice on stuff that impacts the whole of society. I mean, someone like Espenester Pirelli, I know I keep coming back to this person, but Espenester has a PhD, but it's not a real PhD. It's basically an honorary PhD that this person just got from university, and the only real education that this person has is like a 2 months course in sexology. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Right. And I'm sure that's something that probably replicates in a lot of these degrees. And in general, I'm getting a growing distaste for any sort of credentialism and degree stuff in society. I think we should reject the nerds and try to return to the multifaceted
really
man of the 20th century. Sorry.
I hate coming out in defense of credentialism, but I just want to point that out, that credentialism is quite big in Norway, but they make a principled exception with the sexologists.
Yes, and it's certainly, it's not that all credentials are bad, obviously. You need some standards for some things, but the groundwork that allows for a good credentialism is long gone, so any credential is questionable these days, obviously, especially in Norway when it comes to education, because of the availability and freedom to educate. It's the old, you can just apply Austrian economics to it. If everybody goes to university, then the university degrees are worthless, because everyone has one, so it doesn't really matter. Let's go to the next person here, a pediatrician and researcher, National Treatment Service for Gender Incongruence, Oslo University Hospital. So this means that she is the pediatrician and researcher into transsexual things, basically. Gender incongruence is, of course, the should you say, the beautified word for whatever makes a person feel like their gender does not match their sex. I guess dysmorphia is the other word that's being used.
Yes.
And then there is a specialist in childhood diseases at the Department of Child Health and Development at the National Institute of Public Health. So this guy is, and these two are the, quote unquote, only real doctors here. I would say that this guy is the most real doctor because he's not, the other person here is a research kind of person, and this guy is a medical specialist. So I think you'll be seeing mostly, facts from this guy, and he's probably gonna take a lot of such stances.
He's gonna destroy them with facts and logic.
I don't know about that, but he's gonna try at least.
Yep.
Okay, so the first assertion is, it is a fact that very many young people with gender dysphoria also struggle with various mental health problems. Imagine my shock.
Wow, who would have thought? Who would have thought? I mean,
maybe there's a
It's
link.
pretty funny because previously, like even a lot of these other alternative sexualities, say like homosexuality, lesbianism, that was considered a mental illness, and there was no incongruence, because it's like, okay, you have one thing, then you have these other things, but now these things have to be treated as legitimate identities. And of course, you run into this problem, is that they are just kind of crazy. I'm sorry to be so belligerent, but
well, especially when it comes to the case that we're talking about here, these are young people with issues about gender identity who also happen to have various mental health problems. And the first thing you want to, deal with is, well, we're going to have to transition you. Never mind everything else, Never mind that you're like 16.
Yep. You're just going to be put them on hormones and
Yeah,
just
that's probably
get
going
them in
to
the
help.
surgery room. That's going to fix all their problems.
Yeah, that's not going to make them depressed.
No, they're not going
Okay.
to regret that.
Yeah. Okay, so the first person here, the leader for the anti-movement, says that research shows that comorbidity in the rapidly growing new group of young people who experience gender incongruence is high. Many have neuropsychiatric conditions such as autism, Asperger's, ADHD, depression, anxiety, suicidality, and trauma problems. But we know too little, and we need more knowledge about this and should show caution in relation to quickly putting young people on medical treatment with hormones and surgery. What's interesting here is that you get a bit of... she comes out swinging, but then she hedges. And where I would like her to say that we should just stop, she falls back into the, oh, but we need more information. That's my take on it.
This is the price of admission to be in the discussion, is that you have to be like this kind of shit conservative, like this progressive. You're just like a progressive going the speed limit, basically. We really want everybody to transition, but we need a little bit more information so we can do it safely. That's
right,
their,
and in the end, I think that's
argument.
actually her sort of stance, but we can get into that when we look at their actual petition. Sorry, I cut you off.
No problem.
Okay. And then there's the Authorized Sexologist. It is true that young transgender people are overrepresented in studies on mental illness, but this has not been proven to be linked to gender incongruence. On the other hand, studies show that many people struggle with mental health problems because they find it demanding to be part of a minority who experience that they're not accepted by their surroundings. These two things are not linked. Like saying that, oh, because I'm a minority group, like everybody, this is what I hate about this, because basically she's going, oh, do you have a source for that? Do you have a peer-reviewed study? Because she's saying that, everybody knows that if you're bullied in school and you're a young person, of course you're going to have a tough time, right? You're going to have a hard time fitting in. That doesn't mean you're a transgender. It doesn't mean you have to transition.
No, but they seem to almost be pushing them in that direction.
Right.
That's the impression that I'm getting
that's the
from a
way
lot
it's
of these
going.
like these activist groups that are coming in here. It's like, just, oh, well, you don't feel so good. You got problems at school. Maybe you should consider chopping your nuts off. That's gonna solve your problem. I mean, they're just recruiting for their own side at this point. They're not even trying to hide it. They're just coming in to recruit more, progressives before they become adults. And
Yes.
they can stand up against it. It's just like this bio-Leninism recruitment campaign
Before it's too late. Yeah.
I mean, you look at these, having these discussions when you just kind of, that's the problem, is that they can come with these sort of, well, you got a source on that, you got a source on this, and you can just doubt everything. So when you acknowledge that that their stance that, young people should just be able to surgically castrate themselves if they don't feel good about themselves. I mean, if you've kind of accepted that as a sort of like, this is a rational debate position, and that, we're going to go there anyway, you're kind of stuck in this position where they can just doubt everything you're saying, and, well, you don't have studies and you're just a bigot. So
yeah, because you're never going to find a true study sort of starting from that point, because it's, the outset is wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Now you can go on.
I'm going to go on. So just to reiterate, so we're going to do an assertion and then everyone is going to answer. And so the pediatrician and the head gender dysmorphia person answers, yes, that's right. Research and own clinical experience indicate that up to 2/3 have mental challenges. And doesn't even care to try to understand why. I think she knows that if she walks into that one, she's going to have a hard time holding her position.
She's just gonna punt on this one.
And then the last one, the doctor, Yes, it has been shown in several studies, including from Sweden. Most studies are cross-sectional studies in which the participants' mental health is mapped at a specific time. Thus, they cannot distinguish between mental difficulties that are a consequence of gender dysphoria and difficulties that occur before gender dysphoria. This is a challenge when asserting whether treatment is necessary. If the difficulties are a result of gender dysphoria, an improvement can be expected after gender-confirming treatment. If they have occurred before the gender dysphoria, however, the gender dysphoria may change or disappear if the mental health condition improves. So this is a lot of technical words to say that, we don't really know. Most likely, if you stop being sad before you do the transitioning, it's probably going to be fine. But he's also hedging a bit here. That might just be because he is more sort of analytical than the other guys, and he doesn't want to be caught out saying something that is wrong. I'm not quite sure.
So just looking at the sort of leftist debate playbook, can you see the point where he's conceding ground here? Is that he's using the term gender confirming treatment, basically. So you've already conceded.
I was going to point that out. Yeah.
So
he's using their language.
That's their word. You should use a different word to actually say that. It's just call it like chemical castration or just like gender reassignment or something.
You can just say
call it gender, like confirming. That's just running
you can just
trap.
Say you can just use like dangerous chemical treatments, or there's so many things you can say that is palatable, but you don't have to play their game. So and I think my takeaway from this in the end is that this guy is sort of the conservative failing because he's playing in their world, basically. Okay, let's go on to the next assertion. Oh, it's also a note that all the panelists agreed that this statement is true. Not that that doesn't really say anything. So the next one. It is a fact that the vast majority of young people who feel that they are born in the wrong body calm down in their biological sex when they have reached puberty. This is a bit of a quirk of the translation. I think it means settles down in their biological sex when they have reached puberty. And they also tend, I don't have anything ready for that, but I'm sure someone can back me up, but I think there's a tendency to settle down once you get out of puberty as well. So, do you have any comments on this assertion before we start?
No, not really.
Okay. So, the Antiwoman, those who regret undergoing treatment, are growing strongly internationally. This is information that is hidden in the media, and these detransition sufferers in a double sense suffer in a double sense in that they are denied. We also lack research-based knowledge in this area. The confirmation model, which has also gained a foothold in this country within the treatment apparatus, should be abandoned, as this increases the risk of incorrect treatment. Again, I'll say that she falls one step too short for me. I would like ideally, if I could game this, I would like her to take a stronger moral stance against this.
Yeah, but that's just kind of out of the book right now. That's the regime that we're living in. You can't take a moral stance that has anything to do with like anything that would remind you of being right-wing or authoritarian, traditional. You can't do it because it's fascism. You can't make those stances. You have to then come with this kind of evidence-based. I mean, if you're conservative, you have to make an evidence-based case, and if you're progressive, then you can just make a sort of more ideological case. That's kind of the implicit rules here, because they both agree where society is going.
Yes. And so she falls back into this but it's all about the treatment, and it's not about the thing we're doing, it's about how we're doing it, which is I think totally wrong.
Yes. You have to basically convince the progressives that they're not being progressive the correct way.
Yeah.
So they would be more effective and just going slower, which is actually true.
Yeah.
This is actually true. They're having more success. I mean, echoing the statements of Morgoth. I mean, these people are like bucktooth retards. They don't even understand that they're destroying their own credibility by being as aggressive as they are, and you know, rubbing people's faces with this stuff. They're creating a lot of animosity, and they're alienating large sections of their base, and they don't know how to even deal with it. So paradoxically, from an accelerationist standpoint, I almost end up supporting these kind of hyper progressive people because they that's sometimes, to me, it seems like that's the only way out of this. That you just let them have all the power, and people are just going to get so ticked off by these tendencies that they start looking for different solutions. Then going back to the voter booth.
Yes. I have a couple of friends who sort of have that stance as well. And I'm not quite sure where I fall on that myself. It's on a bit of a day-to-day basis, I guess. I'm gonna go to the chat real quick here. See if there's anything interesting before we go on. I'm sorry, I can't read tonight. Recently, the attempted suicide rate for adolescent trans people rose to 50% in 2018. That is incredible. That is incredibly high. Scary high. The Dave of Guy says hello. Hello. Welcome. I identify as both taller and stronger than I am physically, says Herlock Scholz. Yes. It's the old attack helicopter meme. I'm sorry, Vingle, my shout-out didn't amount to much.
Well, I mean, I feel like I subscribe to Wingle, and I gave him a couple of likes on the videos, but I feel like things are really thinning out on YouTube. You see, like, YouTubers like the Credentialist, you look at how few subs he actually has compared to the quality of the content, and it seems like it's there's just so many creators. Either that's the problem, or less people are watching, and the content is just being suppressed by the algorithm. That's sort of how I think about it, but it seems to be the trend almost all over the place.
I think it's like I think it's a perfect storm of the subject matter, the not to toot my own horn, but for someone like Credentialist, I mean, you have to have some kind of interest in these kinds of things. If you're going to watch his content, you're going to have, how many people are smart enough and, autistic enough to spend their free time watching geopolitics content on YouTube when you could be watching, I don't know, gaming stuff, I suppose. It's the modern world is a world of foxes, and foxes would rather divert your attention than fight you head on. So whether specifically or unintentionally, people are not led to this kind of content. And then adding on everything else that you mentioned, I think we talk about other creators in this sphere, and someone like, say, Academic Agent, who is certainly the largest one. He has 60,000 subscribers, I think, or probably more now. But even in the grand scale of YouTube, that is not a lot of subscribers. I could probably just go to like the first guy I've subscribed to who does video games, and he has more subscribers than that.
Yeah, so, I mean, you have a lot of the top, like, bread tubers, a lot of these morons, like, say, like Vosh, I think, is like 300,000. Destiny is around 400,000. Hunter Avalone, I think I checked his channel. If I didn't read wrong, he has like 500,000 subs. I don't know how that even happens, because his average view count is like it's like 2,000.
I think
so the percentage of the people who are actually interacting with his content is really small, but he has just so many subs.
Yes, and that's something that I think, and I've said this on multiple streams, that when I look at my analytics, a lot of my viewers are my subscribers, which I do like, because it's not one of those, a lot of people subscribe and then never return, like people who are actually interested in whatever we're doing. So I think the retention is better, but I also think things like Bosch and these bread tube things, I mean, calling it philosophy is it's entertainment more than it is education. and I like to think that the
Yeah,
focus on the right is a bit more on the education rather than entertainment, for the most part, of course.
at least, I mean, entertainment is good. For those guys, it's basically just like trying to dunk on people to create entertainment, like this kind of debate entertainment. And of course, there's an intellectual dimension to it, but most of the people, that at least my impression is that most of the people who subscribe to them, they just want to watch debates where they confirm their own viewpoint, and they're just kind of like dunking on these kind of crazy trad cons, Nazi people that are on YouTube's. So
Yeah.
I mean, they are just kind of extensions of the systems. That's how I view them. Like, they're not formally employed, with a government contract, but the machine promotes them because they're willing to just fight the systems fight for them and do exactly, what a government employee would have been doing, and to just attack the enemies of the system, and they get promoted, and they get the ability to make a lot of money off these platforms. I don't know if you have another take on that, Walrus.
No, I don't. I don't think I have anything to add to what you said. I don't know if there's any. I don't think there's any solution to it. At least not on the trajectory that we're on now. Anyway.
No dialogue.
Nope.
That's
no
the
dialogue.
solution.
That's the solution.
No dialogue. Do not dialogue with these people.
Yeah.
Do
No, I
not
agree.
do it.
Yeah.
Waste your time. I mean, it is just, they are just completely there to dunk. I don't know if you saw that debate, because it was on Odyssey. I don't want to get too far off topic. I just want to make a quick point on it. But there was a debate between Mark Collett. You know who he is?
Yes.
I think he's like in some sort of British resistance. I mean, he's just thrown all the way off YouTube. Mark Collett, and he was debating Destiny about a certain replacement, a certain genocide, and
a certain conspiracy theory. You mean?
Yeah, a certain conspiracy theory, and like what interested me is that Destiny has. Because I watched the debate on both of their channels, so I could see the comments both on the Odyssey version and on Destiny's YouTube version. I mean, Destiny has 400,000 subscribers. How many of those do you think are white? If you would guess.
Do you want me to actually guess?
Yeah, just guess. Like I don't have the number. I would guess like over 90%, maybe like 95.
Yeah, I would think so too. It's probably a high number.
So like this debate is actually something that concerns like that group of people. It concerns you if you are a white person. Then the stuff that's being discussed, if you agree with it or you don't agree with it, like Mark Collett will sit and bring up all these quotes that world leaders will say, and like it's all of these government agendas and so on, and like this is something that will affect you if you are white. But you see these comments under the like Destiny's video, it's just all, oh bro, you dunked on him, bro. It's like, oh, owned.
What a wild conspiracy theory.
Like, there's nobody's interested in like actually engaging with the idea.
No, because that's what I'm saying. Like, these things are,
but
they're shows, they're gladiatorial fights,
I'm sorry to get too off track here.
Yeah, we're a bit off track. I'll just real quick add one more thing from the chat. I see the Dave guy here said that I noticed at my job that more and more of my non-social media obsessed colleagues are getting tired of identity politics and glorification of LGBT, despite my job being very tied into it. So, and that's the thing you were kind of saying, Ludwig, that, it's, at some point, something's got to give, and the sort of center of competence in the population is going to have enough. And my hope is that it doesn't end violently, but the harder they push, or maybe the longer they push, the more violent the correction is going to have to be. And I wouldn't want that to happen. So
you could think about like, but I don't know how much force you actually have to use against this elite class. You can just show up and just like pull your arms, pull your t-shirt up a little bit and show your bicep or something, and they'll just I surrender. Yeah.
When the warrior comes knocking, the fox and the merchant is gonna.
You think like William Fence is gonna go into a fist fight?
Yeah, right.
These people are not gonna like actually stand there and bring guns and that
No,
kind of
of
stuff.
course
Like you
not.
can just show up with a pistol, show
Yeah.
up at his office. So I'm just joking, of course.
This is
This is a
hypothetical.
simulation in Minecraft, completely hypothetical. But I do not think that these people, like a sort of Tony Blair or like a William Fence, or these guys are gonna like actually try to fight this stuff like physically, like they're gonna bring in
they're
mercenaries
certainly
and
not
go outside of their
warriors in
comfort zone. So,
the archetypal
and if
sense.
the army has just turned into like this kind of like trans, gay parade show, then I mean, how much force are you going to need? It's just you're just gonna have to be a kind of consensus
It
that
doesn't have
people
to
aren't
be a
happy
lot of
with.
force. It just has to be targeted properly, I think. But that's my point as well. The longer this goes on, the more dangerous sort of the populist correction is going to be. And that might lead to even more violence than is technically necessary. Which is why these philosophies are important, I think, because if you understand the thoughts of the elite theorists, and when you start to see the world in that way, it makes a lot of sense. Let's put it that way.
I think, I mean, there will have to be a correction there where that element is like the lion element is going to have to come back in there, where like a lot of these people who are running society now need to respect that aspect.
Yes.
They need to respect that there are people who are like stronger than them, who are physically tougher, willing to take more physical risks, and that you can't just, kick these people around with their money and their, all these sort of computer power, all these kind of networks. Like they have to actually respect the worker and the kind of rugged army man and these people. You can't just kick them around like they're doing now.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of correction that needs to happen here. Like these people, Zuckerberg can't be like the alpha of society. He just can't. There's something wrong with society.
It's not sustainable. Yeah.
No.
Okay, let's keep going. We sidetracked really hard. The research referred to here is of poor quality. Now, we're talking to the... this is the sexologist speaking. The research referred to here is of poor quality. There is talk of one publication from 2013, the one comparing boys who dressed in dresses and played with Barbie dolls with boys who experienced gender incongruence. And then conclusions have been drawn from that. Later publications show the opposite, that few change their gender experience after they have started puberty. I disagree, but it's not very interesting of a point. She just pulls up one study, I guess, to counter another. I'll keep going. This is the Trans Researcher. The figures around this are extremely uncertain. In summary, previous studies show that majority found themselves comfortable in their biological sex after puberty. Beyond this, there has not been much research, although one can find something. Large groups have not been followed up. But if there's no basis for claiming that the vast majority calm down in their settle down in their biological sex, we can safely say that research indicates that the majority are comfortable. So this one is interesting because she basically agrees with this.
Yeah, I thought I misheard it, but it seems like she's arguing against her own position here.
Huh. There is also limited knowledge here. Based on the knowledge we have, it seems that gender dysphoria occurs in childhood. In most cases ceases before adulthood. Many of these children end up as lesbians or gays as adults. For gender dysphoria that occurs in adolescence, we do not know how it goes in the long run. So the panel agrees that there is limited knowledge in the field. This was very uninteresting, actually.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to
my thoughts on this is really sort of, I mean, what did people do in the past with this stuff if this is such a huge problem? I mean, when does this show up in the past? Maybe someone can correct me with some studies or whatever,
Yeah.
but like, if this is just a kind of biological or it's a universal problem, shouldn't this have come up at some point?
Yes, I'm
in the last
confused
100
as to
years?
why this isn't a part of history, in the sense that, I mean, the activists would probably say that, oh, but it's suppressed. But I think that given our current regime, you'd probably hear about it if this was a widespread historical phenomenon for thousands and thousands of years, and it'd be built into our culture. I mean, if that's something that just happens to normal humans in normal
just,
natural circumstances, culture would be built around that. We'd have religious practices around this.
Yes. I have the exact same question. It's all around the world, and it's very little. I mean, they could sit and argue vaguely, like around these sort of Hindu gods, or like this kind of like omnisexual beings, but it's in my opinion, it's very weak. It seems to be like, because they're coming in, they're saying that we're just liberating these people, but they didn't exist before you even came onto the scene. So
yeah, it's interesting. Okay, let's keep going. With regard to the long-term effect of gender-correcting treatment, knowledge is minimal. So first off, the Antiwoman. English Kara Bell's story tells how wrong this can go. She underwent gender reassignment treatment, but later regretted it. Then she took the case to court and argued that the health service should challenge her desire for gender reassignment, should have challenged her desire for gender reassignment more than what they did. Bell won the lawsuit, but the verdict was overturned last fall. It is now up to doctors to decide whether children under the age of 16 can receive anti-puberty treatment in the UK. The verdict in the first case shows how little we know, despite the fact that all the top expertise was called in as witnesses. That is, I just think this is a very funny, funny in the so sad it's funny story that, the state can do this to, or you can go to the state and have this done to you, and then you can regret it and sue the state for more taxpayer money. That is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, on one side, I feel sorry for the victims of this who go to their doctor and say they don't feel too good, and they get recommended gender reassignment surgery. But at the same time, when those people come back and create more drama because they were failed by the state and boo-hoo, I don't know. I struggle with the sympathy on that.
Yes, me too. But, I mean, this is really dark. It is up to doctors to decide whether children under the age of 16 can receive anti-puberty treatment in the UK. And, I mean, if you're a kid who's struggling with mental issues, how is messing with your hormones going to help? I was talking to my wife about this because she was reading this article as well. And I told her that, every time you're on your period, and she knows this, right? She gets into mood swings because of her hormones. That's just what women do. And if that can mess with you to such a degree, and that's just a sort of a small burst that your body gives you once a month, imagine what that does to someone who isn't a grown person, who isn't ready to handle this.
I can point to another case that is like this performative contradiction, or that is what you call the principled exception in society, is that, in terms of marketing and reaching out to kids, the government still are running campaigns against steroid use for young men, which is apparently it's something that happens, if you're a young guy and you start lifting weights, a lot of them, have what's called like bigorexia, or like megarexia, where they feel like they're too small and they can't put on weight, so they'll buy like illegal male sex hormones to grow their muscles. But they get they get reached out to, and there's been big marketing campaigns to advise young men and women not to do this, because it's going to mess with their mental states. It's going to make them unstable, and they're more at risk for suicide. And so on, and it's a very similar case. To me, it's almost impossible to say that a person's sort of incongruence in terms of gender is different from, say, a person who feels like they're not physically the way they should be, and then chooses to use drugs and the sort of synthetic hormones to change their bodies. Like I for the life of me, I can't understand the difference between those two things. But one of them is really good and is apparently just affirming, and the other thing is damaging.
Yeah.
How long can that last? I mean, when is at what point, if this keeps going, they're just going to allow your kids to take steroids from like 12? You know, it's up to the doctor to say that, you know, yeah, you know, I'll put your kid on a cycle of Trenbolone or something.
I mean, in the sense, and, that's the way it's going with you know the transhumanism sort of future of everything's going to be solved by technology and everything's going to be fantastic. You're just going to take a pill for everything and know nothing and be happy, etc., etc. That's going to make you a slave to it.
Yeah, there's no moral dimension to anything outside of consent. If you consented to it, then it's moral. And it's just like these doctors just become service providers. They don't have any moral duty in terms of guidance or anything. It's just, oh, you want this treatment? Well, just sign here and we'll get it for you.
Yes, it's the future is bleak. I saw Richard Nordheimer posting something about it in the chat, and the future is bleak indeed. And the correction is going to have to be considerable if there's anything to save. Let's keep going. So the assertion is that with regard to the long-term effect of gender-correcting treatment, knowledge is minimal. This is the sexologist saying, there is little research in the field in this country, which is connected with a thin population base. Internationally, however, there are several studies and research from Australia, the USA, and the Netherlands, among others, that conclude that gender-confirming treatment helps against gender dysphoria. There is no evidence that the treatment can lead to poorer health. I would like to argue that being dead is a sign of poor health.
Yeah. I hope it is. Maybe not in the statistics. I mean, you have a lot of these people that have this
like kind of survivorship bias among the statistics.
Bias. I mean, you know, that's the problem with these people. They have this kind of technocratic, utilitarian way of thinking, and you see it a lot with the latest illness that have been going around. The way that they'll, you know, change statistics and they change the definitions of things so they can always make the Excel spreadsheet look good.
Yeah,
it's the same thing with this. It's like if you don't have any hard moral qualifiers as to what is good health or bad health, you can just change the numbers around on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, as long as you get the equations to line up in order, it doesn't really matter how many people die, right? And that's the banality of evil. I don't remember which book that is. That is it's one of the economists.
Arendt or something.
Yeah, probably. Let's go to the Transgender Researcher. There are systematic reviews of science related to gender incongruence, including from Sweden, which show that the knowledge base for assessing the effect of treatment on psychological conditions, gender dysphoria, cognitive development, skeletal health, and other physical effects is not sufficient. Observations of a long period of time do not exist either nationally or internationally today. The increase in the number of inquiries has been large in the last 5 years. We have several ongoing national studies that will be able to provide information on how many start treatment and how many do not want this anyway. Which sort of is a bit of a suspect way of putting it, because she's saying that, oh, we don't know anything about this, but we should probably just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing a whole lot of arguments from the kind of pro-third gender camp so far.
It's a little bit of, and here's why it's a good thing going on. But the assertions here are very non-threatening, which probably says something about the landscape of political stances. Let's go to the doctor here. Yes, this knowledge is deficient. The best follow-up study was conducted in the Netherlands and included 55 adolescents who first received puberty-delaying treatment and then full gender-confirming treatment with hormones and surgery. At the last follow-up, the average was 20 years. Their psychological functioning and quality of life improved during the follow-up period and in the end was in line with the rest of the population of the same age. However, we know little about how this goes later in adulthood. The long-term side effects of hormone therapy are not known, nor has the long-term satisfaction with the surgery been mapped. And I think if you do that mapping, it's going to look very unfavorable, in my opinion. I will add that the only person who is basically challenging the statement here is that knowledge is minimal. And the only person who actually does something about that is this Antiwoman, obviously, because she's saying, yeah, and that's a problem. Everyone else says yes. And without, dealing with any moral consequence of this.
Yeah,
it feels very
I don't know.
fact-checky. In the sense that
they're the trans people are basically on the right side of history, so they don't have the evidence burden. They just have to muddy the waters and say, "Well, we just don't know. We don't know about what happens. We can't appeal to any common norms or any common sense, so we just have to muddy it with data and studies."
Yes. Let's keep going. New assertion. It is a fact that what used to be a small group of children and young people with severe gender dysphoria has more than doubled in the last 10 years. There is no one today who can explain the reasons for the huge increase in young people who experience gender incongruence. There are probably multiple reasons behind this. Without a thorough investigation, there is a great risk that they will undergo irreversible medical treatment on the wrong basis. I have a couple of pointers to where you could start looking into this.
I don't know.
But I think
maybe the media.
Maybe she's covering her ass here. I don't know. By saying that we have to have a thorough investigation.
We need a study here. We need to, like, this is this kind of like we get back to BreadTube and like this sort of Vosh Destiny types. It's like, well, you got to study on that. I mean, you got to study like the fact that they're putting like these trans people, all these TikTokers and all that kind of stuff on TV, and it's just being shoved down children's throat. You got to study on how that has increased the amount of trans people, because I don't have a clear correlation on these things.
Wow, this has like gone up 500% the past 10 years. There's no possible way I can just think about things that have changed in the past 10 years and maybe see if that is the cause, because everything was fine before that.
Yeah, I mean, they try to make that, like I talked about a bit earlier, where have all these trans people been like the last 1,000 years? Why are they showing up now? Does it have something to do with the culture, perhaps? Does it have something to do with the trend? Like, I mean, you're shoving this stuff into children's faces. It's on TV all the time. I mean, you're basically, what the conditioning is right now is that you're telling young kids that it's better, in terms of getting rewards from society and getting attention, it's better just to chop your dick off than to actually do something productive.
Yes.
And that sounds reductive, but when you look at something like that, who was that woman on he was in the Biden cabinet now? It's Levine something. Rachel Levine.
Avril Lavigne? No, what?
No, it's Rachel Levine. I think you could Google it. You get the pictures up.
Rachel Levine.
It's kind of a Cookie Monster person.
Oh, right. The health official. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I remember. I didn't want to remember, like, but I do.
This person has basically gotten like a 4-star admiral decoration.
Right, I remember.
In the military.
Oh, God.
And she, quote unquote, has never been in the army. And it's like 4 people in the army that have actually gotten it. It's like this very hard-earned medal. And so you're telling basically kids, instead of like serving 30 years in the military, making sacrifices and going to fight the enemy and having your arms blown off, just chop your dick off. You just get the same reward. Just chop it off, and you're going to get a place in the government, and you get on TV. It's the same thing with Caitlyn Jenner. Bruce Jenner was like a gold medalist. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about like, okay, you win gold medal in the Olympics or whatever as a runner. No, just chop your dick off. You get all the attention. So that's what they're telling kids over and over and over again, and they're wondering why they have this like 500% increase in the congruence problem. But that's just my that's just the game theory.
Just a game theory.
It's just a game theory, guys. It's just my paranoid right-wing delusions.
Let me just derail this for a second. Is the quality, like, is the image on the stream good? Can you guys read what's on the screen?
I think maybe you could zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, let me see if I can change. It might be too late since I've already started the stream. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit on this. I'm a bit of a boomer
if when it comes to
using OBS.
1080p, then it's a lot better. Let's see.
It's a bit, yeah, I think because I have a, my screen is larger than what I'm outputting. Can I preview this here? And pull this out like this. And then if I zoom in here, just bear with me, guys. Edit transform. That is not the one. Let's see here. Oh, it's moving. Can I scale it? Oh. That might be too much. Or is this better? This is very zoomed in, but at least you can see it. Is this better?
It's a lot better now.
Very zoomed in. You can see it. Okay. Let's get back to it. So, let's keep on going. Yes, it's a fact, says the sexologist. At the same time, this constitutes a very small portion of the population, and the figures must not be used without seeing them in that context. Last year, we received 220 inquiries, which represent an explosive development statistically. There's no reason to believe that everyone should suddenly change gender. And in that sense, she's right. It's a very small minority of the population. But boy, do they take a lot of space.
Yeah, more every day, it seems.
Okay, everyone in the chat says that everything is a lot better now. The transgender researcher says maybe not a 20-fold increase, but we can at least say a 10-fold increase here in Norway. It has been doubling about every year for the last 10 years. Last year, approximately 220 young people were referred for gender-confirming treatment. 10 years ago, there were well under 50 referred. And we're still talking about young people. We're still talking about adolescent people. Like, this isn't...
So I mean, it's doubling every year? Is that what it's saying?
It's doubling every year. So at what point is
this like a pandemic? It's a pandemic of the transgenders. It keeps doubling. If it can't keep going on forever, it's like at one point we're 1 year away from everybody being trans in the country.
Yes. The Dave of Guy in the chat says it's a minority in the population, but I'd say 60% of the teenagers that come into my workplace are some kind of trans, non-binary, gay, or LGBT. But these people don't end up, most of these people don't end up doing the, inquiring about gender confirming treatment, as it's called. Because these people grow out of it. Because they grow up, they stop being hormonal teenagers who are drugged up on porn and social media, and hopefully, I mean, I'm saying hopefully because we don't know how that's going to go yet. I think I managed to escape it barely.
Yeah, and the next generation have to deal with like a new level of technology.
Yeah,
they're going to be dealing with the VR headsets and the masturbation machines and the realistic dolls.
Yes.
I don't know how they're gonna do it. It's the survival of the fittest.
Yeah, maybe. And then the doctor chimes in, yes, that's right. Such an increase has been observed in many countries after 2010. Strange, including Norway. The majority of the increase is made up of biological girls who want to live as boys. We do not know the reasons for the increase. It's a mystery. One possibility is that reduced stigma means that more people now dare to appear as trans and seek health care. Press X to doubt.
Wrong. Doubt.
Another explanation may be that the increase is related to a general increase in mental illness for young girls from 2010 onwards, which has also been observed in Norway and many other countries. I think that's a lot more credible, my dude, considering how you went on about mental illness like 2 answers ago. It is also claimed that influence from the internet and social media plays an important role. Oh, really? Do culture affect the youth?
Yeah, well, it has to affect it in some way. I mean, if they're saying that if it's more accepted now, that's why it's more of it, and that means the culture is allowing it to exist. So, I mean, if you concede that, you've conceded that culture can impact behavior.
Yeah, certainly. And then all the panelists agree, once again, that the growth has been explosive, and the sky is blue. Assertion. Pink competence and restart, which are 2 educational packages that have been introduced by LGBT NGOs into the school learning plans here in Norway, violate the Education Act 1.1 and 2.4. The association FRI does not present training that meets these requirements. Their teaching is, on the contrary, subjective, ideologically one-sided, and devoid of any alternative views. Do you have any thoughts on that before we tackle the first answer?
I mean, we could go into that. It's a pretty triggering topic. I've been a lot more spicy on this stream than I think I've been previously because, well, I'm a little bit lubed up here, but it's also I just get so pissed off with this topic.
They do foundation get a lot more into it in this petition I have here afterwards. If you want to save yourself for that, we can just knock out these last ones and then go into this one.
I'm just going to comment on like the association FRI. I mean, they've gotten approval on every step, like on every level in the institution, so with every bureaucracy, to the point where they are going into kindergartens and talking about like gender reassignment. That's where we are now.
Yeah,
it sounds totally bizarre, but that's actually where they are, and they don't even want to disclose what they're teaching them.
The level of subversiveness here is incredible, because if you talk to the and for me it was the same thing probably until a couple of years ago, where this is inconceivable. You don't even, it doesn't even enter your mind that this might be happening. So the average Norwegian doesn't know that this is happening, unless of course they have kids and actually care about what their kids are being taught. Of course,
a lot of them are just not paying attention. But I mean, if you're having a kid and if you're shopping for kindergartens, you ask them about the association FRI and pink competence, and if they say that they were doing it, they just walk away. Walk away mid-conversation. There's no point in putting your kid through that. But I do know that, I mean, through talking to some people, there are people who are resisting it, like these sort of associations of kindergartens where they've actually gone together to try to push that stuff out on the last level because they think it's so absurd.
Yes.
But it's not, I mean, it's not free. They'll usually get some type of economic penalty for it. I think we talked about it on the last stream with the journalism thing, is that they're starting to pull away, government grants from different religious movements like the Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's probably going to be the same thing here. If you don't accept this kind of like pink brainwashing for your kids, then we're going to pull your government money.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we can just go on
That's
now.
how they put the squeeze on the kindergartens and the schools, etc., etc. Yeah, let's keep going. So the Antiwoman says the Education Act states that one must disseminate evidence-based knowledge. The education sector cannot override this. When schools and even some kindergartens teach contrary to this, it is a way to create insecurity and confusion in children. It is a toxic message. Again, I would say that he goes one step, he falls one step too short, but that's that's the world we live in that she
it's
falls back on
Sam Harris
the
approach.
Education Act, which in itself says that it has to be neutral. But when reality is that it isn't, why wouldn't you want friend good, enemy bad?
Yep.
It's
the
beyond me.
1995.
Yeah.
1995 illusions about a liberal society and the evidence-based stuff. I mean, if you're just deferring to these laws, I mean, these people, like the lawyers and the foundations, they're just going to go for those laws. They've changed some of them already. Why wouldn't they just change these laws that you don't have to use evidence because evidence is racist? They'll find some reason to just change these things if you don't have like a solid moral stance to take on it.
Yeah. Nordanon asks, is homeschooling legal in this country? Homeschooling is legal in this country, as long as you can follow the core guidelines from the government. But that might turn out to be that the core guidelines include this, so you're going to have to at least check the box that you've taught your kids about gender dysmorphia.
Yeah, no, it is legal. It's strangely uncommon in Norway. But I think I have not read any stats on it, but I would imagine that it's going up.
Probably.
I really have a hard time, like with this stuff here, thinking that it's not going to increase on some level.
Yeah, something's got to give at some point. The Education Act states that children and young people are entitled to a safe psychological environment. Then you must be able to be the gender you are and express this in the way that feels right. The Norwegian Directorate of Health has both provided funding for and approved the teaching programs in accordance with the Education Act.
Yep. So there you go. I mean, the bureaucracy has stamped this stuff. So it's like you could, when more evidence, like more marketplace of ideas, more science. It doesn't matter. Like these rats, these absolute toxic, poisonous, fetid rats in the bureaucracies have already rubber stamped it. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you make this appeal to the evidence, so it's true. I mean, the experts who trust the science trust the experts, so they can just go back on that, and you're just getting destroyed.
It's we've been fact checked, Luddick.
Yep.
God, I hate. Okay, can I just go on a tangent for a moment?
Yeah.
I was watching a show on the state channel randomly a month ago or something, and it's a documentary about people who are, let's say, skeptical towards the COOF narrative and the medicine, etc. In Norway. So they interviewed a couple of people who had like a small like Facebook group thing going, and went to a couple of protests. And one of the people they interviewed was a guy who said that he thought that the COOF, I'm just going to be careful about what words I use so that YouTube doesn't nuke me for misinformation, that the COOF was overblown, that the response was too harsh, and that the illness itself had turned out to not be as dangerous as we feared back when it first appeared. And that the definition of the word, can I say that word? The P word? I'm going to have to say it because that's the whole point. The definition, defining the COOF as a pandemic was wrong, in his view, because it wasn't as severe as we thought it was. And so the reporter that's doing the journalism here calls up one of these fact checker guys, actually one of the head fact checkers from one of these this absolute like soy boy dude, who sits there and basically says, well, defining it as a pandemic, what he essentially says is that, well, the WHO called it a pandemic, so it is a pandemic. That's factually incorrect, because the WHO called it a pandemic. It's like,
I
not
think
only
most
didn't
people are going to
have you
settle.
derailed the conversation away from like talking about whether or not the severity of what has been happening is, real, or is great enough to warrant the response, but you've also sort of like fact checked this guy by saying that, well, the Bible says so. So what are you going to do?
Well, that has been a lot of the coverage, and I'm really shocked that like a lot of people are buying this. They just sort of need, I mean, I ultimately think fact checking is a mistake on their part, like, because you go into a dialogue with these people, and at least that guy's perspective was heard. But I mean,
Sure.
for some of these true believers, it's always going to be enough to just get the government stamp of approval. They're just going to say, oh, well, the government says that, well, you can be calm. We got it under control. We got an answer for it. And it doesn't matter how dumb that answer is. I mean, it was some of the same stuff with this kind of fact checking. I remember an article that went to a lot of these tabloid newspapers where they like to knock on Tucker Carlson sometimes. And like Tucker Carlson made is like a small video on Joe Biden. With like Joe Biden was basically, he was standing there holding a speech. He didn't have a mask on. Then he was like coughing in his hand, and then he went right up and just shook people's hand. And then, like Tucker Carlson made fun of him because he's not like following the rules, and he's just he's going to infect people. And then you have like this kind of like head honcho Nakkestad, who's like this doctor, PR spin guy that they've put up there on Norwegian TV. He was saying, well, Joe Biden has been double vaxxed, so he can't infect other people. And like, we even knew at the time that this was wrong. It's completely demonstrably wrong that you can't infect people when you're vaxxed. So it's just like complete sophistry. He's just there to be a spin doctor. He's just there to lie. The fat fuck. What a disgusting. I'm sorry. I'm just going into this. But like, this is the sort of thing, like, I'm just so shocked that people kind of settle for these explanations. They just turn their brain off. As long as there's like an establishment explanation for this stuff, then it's all good.
Yeah, and what it also did in this specific example is that it twists this guy's argument from the severity of what's going on, and the response is it doesn't match up to this guy doesn't believe it happened. Because he didn't call it that word, and we all know that word means blah because the WHO said so. So I'm just at the point where like the fact checkers, like, you evolve or devolve, I guess, from a journalist into a fact checker, because that's the next stage of evil.
Jesus. Yeah, I think fact checking in the future, it's just going to be like pure artificial intelligence. You don't even need people to do this. You can just like you hear like one claim, and you just have like a voice recorder, and they'll just provide some quote that is vaguely related to it as a rebuttal. It doesn't even have to make sense from like a human perspective. It's just it's covered.
Yes. Question for all the fellas here from the Dave of Guy. How does the trans trend affect you personally as a man? As a woman, I feel I have some reason to be concerned because of the inherent differences between men and women. Well, I mean, they're certainly going to get bodied in any sort of physical sport. Personally, I mean, I have a wife that I'm happy with, so it doesn't affect me really. But I'm really worried about my kids. That's the way it's going to have to go, because at some point, they're going to have to enter kindergarten, and they're going to have to enter schools, and they're going to be pumped full of this stuff unless I find some way to opt out of it.
Yes, it's the same for me. I mean, I'm at that age now where I'm in this kind of I'm married and I have a safe job, and like the job is mostly just like middle class boomer whites, so that stuff doesn't come up. I could have just, I don't have to be here, right? I could have just,
Same. Like if I
screw,
just wanted
screw
to be
you
the bug
guys.
man and never think about this
Yeah.
again, I could probably be fine. Like my job isn't going anywhere before I'm retired because the digitalization isn't going anywhere either. So they're going
Yeah,
to
no,
need
it's just getting bigger. There's always going to be problems to solve.
yeah.
And so I don't have to be here, but I did go to school like during when the multicultural stuff was being instituted, and I felt the brunt of that.
Right.
And that's something that the generation before me, they don't understand, because it's like they've not tried to, like, you get in a fight because you brought like ham on your bread or something.
Oh wow, yeah.
Because that's not halal, like
relatable, yeah.
the Pakistani kids are going to go fight you because you're eating ham or something like that. They're going to pull a knife on you. Like, the boomers have never experienced anything like that. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, the immigration it's enriching us. And yeah, it's enriching you. You get all these fucking, Polish workers to build out your stupidly large house even more. And you can go marry this kind of Asian bride that you ordered online. I mean, it's all great stuff for them, but it's I'm the one who's getting my ass kicked, and not to think about all of these kind of gang rapes by these migrant gangs on Norwegian girls. So I mean, that's kind of what happened to a lot of my generation, and the next wave is going to be this kind of environmentalist bug man and trans agenda that's going to be hitting them.
Yeah, there's a lot of hidden sort of downsides to these things that a lot of most Norwegians don't think about, and that it's very easy not to think about. And but when it's about the kids, because me as an adult, that is, I hesitate to use the term woke to this stuff, can probably navigate it pretty easily and just sort of get in, get my gibs and get out, and try not to get killed on the way. But that's not possible if I want to, want to create life, so to speak, and actually have them grow up into something good and healthy and sustainable. Unfortunately, we do live in a society.
Yep. There is a social contract, and it's not just this kind of liberal concept.
No.
Like, you have to think about it, sort of continuation of society. It's not just you, like this kind of selfish individual existing on your own, just making some money, getting some pleasure, and getting out of there. There has to be something else.
Let's knock out the couple of answers here. The trans researcher answers that we do not know well enough about this teaching we do not know enough about this teaching program. I'm calling bullshit. Like, some if it's been approved and it's already being taught, someone knows enough about this program. Come on. It is important to get it mapped. Okay. Information about variation in gender expression is great and should be strengthened, but it is important that it is not linked to having to belong to another gender with medical treatment as a consequence.
Yeah, we're slicing the salami here.
Yeah.
Like in two ways. Like, we don't want to link it to treatment, but we're going to suggest the idea early so that we can get the treatment later.
This is probably you, but come back in 10 years. I cannot assess whether the requirements of the Education Act are satisfied, but I share the concerns about the teaching arrangements of pink competence. The good thing about the schemes is that they encourage increased tolerance for different gender expressions and more spacious gender roles. What is worrying, however, is that it builds up under a born in the wrong body mindset, where children are introduced to the idea that those who deviate from gender norms do not really belong in their biological gender, or at least they should question their gender. So you have here Mr. Paul, the tomboy respecter, that is sad that all his tomboys are getting taken from him and turned into transgenders. In addition, information that is medically and biologically incorrect is disseminated, for example, through claims such as many boys have penises and many girls have a clitoris, but not everyone, or not all. Yeah, things like that. It's like absolutely insanity in these learning programs. There is disagreement about this claim among the panelists, apparently. So let's go into the actual petition, because this is the Antiwoman that was in this article. She made this. She's the spokesperson for this movement with 20,000 signatures. And I'm just gonna read paragraph by paragraph, and you can interrupt me when I say something you want to comment on.
Yep.
Yes to the bisexual model, no to the radical gender ideology. An appeal to the politicians in the Storting and the Norwegian population to confirm that there are only two genders, male and female. This appeal says yes to the bisexual model and no to the radical gender ideology being implemented in kindergartens, schools, and in society as a whole. Our children and society in general must not be exposed to the radical... I'm just making sure that I can actually show you guys what I'm reading. There we go. Our children and society in general must not be exposed to the radical political agenda of the Free Association by the comprehensive introduction of their training program Pink Competence and Restart. The concrete background for this appeal to the politicians is the 20 representative proposals from the Labour Party and the Greens on strengthening LGBT policy and an active rainbow policy to strengthen gender and sexual diversity, which is taken straight out of Free's political agenda. So I'm just going to comment here real quick. Here is a case of an NGO straight up, the pipeline of NGO into policy being very clear, even to the point where they didn't even change the title. This is not the first time similar decisions have been proposed. Therefore, the appeal should contribute as a public enlightenment and a counterweight to the fact that radical gender ideology can be freely adopted over the heads of the population. We who are behind the appeal represent a number of different groups. We are professionals. We are parents, representatives from various political views, people with different sexual orientations, and with different views on life. What we all have in common is that we are critical of the ideology and the information that Foreningen Free conveys through its courses, Pink Competence and Restart. We are very critical of gender being defined as a social construct, independent of biology. That is, where gender is determined by what gender one feels one is. Social gender is the social and cultural construction that conveys expectations and attitudes about biological gender. Social gender is flexible and can change throughout history. Biological sex, on the other hand, cannot be changed, and in dimorphic species that occur in two forms, there are only two sexes, and it is important for us to emphasize that we are against hate crimes. I think the translation is... okay. And it is only male and female. It is important for us to emphasize that we are against hate crimes and that we distance ourselves from any form of discrimination of people on the basis of their orientation and or gender identity. This also includes people who want to change gender or have already done so. Current legislation takes care of this for all Norwegian citizens, not at least those who belong to vulnerable groups in the Gender Equality and Discrimination Act.
Right, they're already conceding this. This is a good time, actually. I need to find this one link that I had. It is this Norwegian law, this straffelovsparagrafen. It is like previously like the paragraph on racism.
Right.
I'll link it to you in the chat here, so you can bring that up.
Let's see, copy this. I'm going to run this through the translator, so it's going to probably garble some of the legalese, but I'll try to show this. Give me a moment. So, Hate speech. A fine or imprisonment for up to 3 years is punished for anyone who intentionally or with gross negligence makes a discriminatory or hateful statement in public. The use of symbols is also considered an expression. Anyone who, in the presence of others, intentionally or with gross negligence makes such a statement to a person who is affected by this is punishable by a fine or imprisonment for up to 1 year. By discriminatory or hateful expression is meant threatening or insulting someone or promoting hatred, persecution, or contempt for someone because of their skin color, national or ethnic origin, religion or belief, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or disability.
You see the point D there, gender identity and gender expression, that was added very recently.
Yes.
So for most of the time the Norwegian law has existed, that's not been in there. I mean, this entire law hasn't been there, but that's a very new addition, meaning that, that denying someone, say misgendering someone, is like the same as Holocaust denial, basically, in this law. And so they've already conceded that this is legitimate. I mean, for me, this is not legitimate. And this is something they've just added in there. There was no discussion about it. There was no debate. We're just going to put it in there that discriminating on basis of someone's gender identity is the same as discriminating on, say, skin color or like ethnic origin.
Yes, so something updated,
that
basically.
Something that doesn't exist. Like just talking about gender identity as something that exists means that you're conceding.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to. You can just say that, it's not real. Gender identity is not real. You have a sex that refers to, like, you're either like a XY or XX. Yeah, like you have male or female genitalia, or you can produce a child, or you produce sperm. And everything else is just made up. It's just make believe. It doesn't exist. It has to be rejected wholesale. There's no legitimacy to it. I mean, what exactly is this referring to? If it is like this ever changing, if like gender expression is just changing all the time and it's just fashion, why do you have to respect it? Why is it a hate crime to say that you don't? It is basically like fashion. It is a hate crime to say that you're against the current fashion, basically.
Yeah.
So they got you over the barrel
already. That's what
already.
it turns into when it's so, and I think that is intentional when it's so vague, and when it's applied this broadly. And that's why they have to basically, concede here.
Yep, they have to concede. I mean, they can't turn this back. They're not trying to turn this back. They're just trying to please guys, please take me, not my kids. It's pretty sad. They're not going to be able to hold the line for very long.
The Dave of Guy in the chat here with a zinger saying, if gender identity can't change, doesn't that mean that all trans people can choose not to be trans? That's a big brain take.
Yeah, they can. They can. I mean, that's part of the thing, is that what they're trying to do here is create a sort of new legal precedent where anybody could be anything they want.
Yes,
and it has basically no reference to anything in reality. It is almost like the ultimate expression of anti-fascism, because there's nothing in language and the way we're thinking or communicating that is referring to a physical size. There's nothing that is about anything hardwired in nature that is tying you down. So we're living in this kind of thought space where anybody could be whatever they want, and it doesn't mean anything, and it could just change on a dime. And that is like the ultimate expression of this kind of anti-authoritarian streak that the regime has been on for a while.
It's the side of the boomer truth regime that is it's the hippie side of the boomer truth regime. It's the personal liberation side. The you can just be whatever you want, man side of it.
That is just getting more and more extreme. The ultimate conclusion of the new left. I didn't think that the original new lefters imagined it would go this way, but you just turn the entire legal framework and the historical references. Everything is just turning to ground beef. You just turn the entire legal flattening of every single historical concept, every concept that refers to a kind of family role, every hierarchy. It's all flattened under this kind of new theory of legal theory of how things work.
Yeah, it becomes a mess. Straight up. I'm going to keep on reading. There are good reasons to claim that the teaching programs Pink Competence and Restart violate the Education Act 1.1. The law states that the school's education, quote, shall provide insight into cultural diversity and show respect for the individuals, let me see, make sure that this isn't a weird legalese. The individual's own interpretations. It will promote democracy, gender equality, and specific thinking. 2.4 states that the teaching of religion and philosophy of life shall be rooted in human rights as well as the following principles of objective, critical, and pluralist communication. I think that as you said, with the politics is downstream from law earlier, we already have in law.
What did you say here? Just I missed it here. Just about the part about human rights here, because I'm just going to destroy that
yes,
as well. Let's see.
It states that the teaching of religion, of philosophy of life, shall be rooted in human rights as well as follow the principles of objective, critical, and pluralistic communication.
Yeah,
and that it shall provide insight into cultural diversity and show respect for the individual's own interpretations.
Yeah, and that's their reasoning because they don't want the pink competency.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because everything that I've sort of read about, I can just I mean, can you just Google like the Yogyakarta principles? Have you heard about that before?
I've heard the name, but I am.
Yeah.
Do you have a link or?
I'll just find some link to it here.
Yogyakarta. You just want the.
It's we can just get the Wikipedia article or something.
Yeah, I have it here.
Throw it to you in the chat here.
Okay, the principles. Okay, thank you. Part of a series on LGBT topics. Okay. Let me see here if I can show you guys on stream. I'm just gonna have to resize the.
What do you Yogyakarta? Yogyakarta is a place in Indonesia. It's one word. So it is just like a kind of president. Like this doesn't have any legal mandate, but it's just a bunch of lawyers that have been put together, like this sort of NGO lawyers that were just put together in Indonesia at one point to sit and draft a kind of new way to interpret human rights legislation, to the point where it's a little bit like, if you're familiar with Christopher Caldwell and the Age of Entitlement, that's what I have to a knob to hang it on, where the American Constitution, because of the civil rights movement, has been reinterpreted to not mean negative rights, but to actually dealing in positive rights, even though the Constitution itself hasn't changed much. So this is a lot of the same stuff where they'll basically change how the human rights legislation is interpreted to a point where it's going to be more protective of these kind of vulnerable LGBTQ groups. And this has snuck its way into politics. I mean, I'm reading the book on that now, but it's like it's showing up in basically, like drafts in Norwegian law and these kind of these referendums they do in the government. And there's, we're following the Yogyakarta principles, and you could basically, I mean, the man in the street's not going to know what this is, but you could go to like sort of government.
Almost like a whitewashing or organism, or like a department NGO thing that sort of packages these things into law for politicians to implement. Or
and of course there's no hard power behind this. That's what's so fascinating. Like there's no mandate.
They just
from
issue a statement and then every politician just accept it.
They got together and they wrote these kind of principles that are a bunch of new law, new rules in terms of how you should interpret human rights law. Where it is, I mean, I can't go too in detail right now, not prepared for it, but it's this type of, it is just like subverting all of these principles to the point where, free speech means, like a trans person's right to feel safe in a public fora so that they can speak. That's what free speech means. It doesn't mean that everybody can speak, and so on. So it's like this complete inversion of what all of the original rules in the Human Rights Declaration means. And like this is what they're using now as a framework on drafting these laws, and especially in like with the way they drafted, paragraph 1A5. It's really based on this on these principles. And I mean, this of course sounds totally nuts. This is like this very esoteric, law-based stuff. And I'm not a lawyer, just for clarification, but it's something to look into.
That's interesting. I didn't know about this. This particular.
So when you hear these kind of like these sort of humanist people, these kind of liberal humanist. Back to the 90s people talk about more human rights. I mean, they got you over the barrel again. They got you over the barrel. They you're staring down the barrel of the gun here. You can't refer to that because they got that already. Yes, there's nowhere to hide. You're gonna have to come out and actually fight these people. You can't make an appeal to these liberal rules that they don't respect.
No, that's Jesus. Yeah. No, I just it's. You think things are bad, and then somehow it just gets worse. If you only knew how bad things really are.
What I usually say, I mean, if we are at that point that these gay NGOs have gotten into kindergartens, then I mean, there's a lot of rot in the system, and we're just peeling it back. We're just peeling back layers and poking in the wall here and seeing how much how this sort of soft, mushy planks and boards.
Yeah. I'll keep reading. The association free does not represent training that meets these requirements. Their teaching is, on the contrary, subjective, ideologically one-sided, and devoid of alternative views. It is therefore absolutely necessary that other aspects than the perception of reality that Pink Competence and Restart have ownership of are presented to our children and young people. Anything else will be indefensible, undemocratic, and anti-pluralistic.
Oh no, it's going to be anti-pluralism. Guys, they're being anti-pluralist.
Oh no, stop being a cohesive social unit. The teaching at Freed contributes to increased confusion among children and young people. We are particularly concerned that such education may reinforce a development in which more and more children and young people want a gender reassignment. It is a fact that what used to be a small group of children and young people with severe gender dysphoria has more than doubled in the last 10 years. That this increase alone is due to a more open society does not make sense on the basis that there is also an increase in proportion on who now stand up and regret their gender change. Going through a gender reassignment using hormones and surgery is a drastic intervention of young people's bodies. Given that there are serious side effects associated with this type of treatment, we are very skeptical that this is considered a sound treatment method. If treatment remains the only alternative, only the centralized treatment services can be recommended, MBTS and HBRS. So only the government gets to treat you guys.
Yep.
That's what they're saying. The fact that very many young people with gender dysphoria also struggle with various mental health problems is a clear signal that the problems and challenges are often complex. It is also a fact that the vast majority of young people who feel that they are, quote, born in the wrong body, unquote, calm down in their biological sex when they have reached puberty. That should be settled down in their biological sex. The prerequisite for this to happen is that they have not received hormone treatment and puberty-blocking medicine. Regarding the long-term effect of gender-corrective treatment, knowledge is minimal. If the proposals from the Labour Party and the Greens on decentralized treatment of young people with gender dysphoria are adopted, there is reason to fear that we may face one of the biggest medical scandals since the introduction of lobotomy in 1948. Now this is the kind of language I like.
This is good.
Yeah, this one
paragraph. They saved it back. They pulled me back in again. We're getting the red meat here. This is the
glimmer of hope. And then they're going to pull it back, if I remember correctly from reading this. Nobody wants poor living conditions for LGBT people or others, and we fully support the work that they must not in any way be exposed to harassment, incitement, and discrimination. It is therefore important that one in school also learn about this and focus on the fact that people are different and everyone should be respected for who they are. The Christian and humanistic view of humanity is rooted in the Norwegian curricula for primary and lower secondary school, and this means that everyone has a right to respect, regardless of beliefs, opinions, and various forms of sexual preference. Even though Norway has come a long way in this attitude work, there is of course always room for improvement. But something completely different is when the state initiates extensive work to break down traditional and cultural norms, as well as eliminating the importance of biology in a project aimed at the entire population in order to safeguard the interest of a small group of people. So I would say that, this paragraph is very interesting because you're saying that, let me just pull up the Norwegian one to make sure that I have this correct. Yes. This paragraph basically describes the breaking down of cultural norms, traditional cultural norms. And then it laments that we're breaking down cultural norms.
You had me in the first half there. I mean, I'm totally confused about this stuff. We go back to this kind of liberal idiocy again, where they think that
that's what this is, right? This whole thing here, a humanistic view of humanity, is rooted in the Norwegian curricular for primary and lower secondary school, etc., etc. They're basically like laying out the boomer truth regime liberal attitude, not the quote-unquote traditional Norwegian cultural attitude.
Traditional Norwegian Christianity that allowed respect for homosexuality. Yeah, that's
yes, right. And it's not saying that, you have to, if you want to be a Norwegian, you have to hate foreigners. No, but like the concept of your culture and tradition is, you put you and yourself and your people first, and that's just how things have been for thousands of years. And then 1945 happens, and suddenly, we're going to flip that, and so this is very much in that boomer truth regime. And so saying that, well, I mean, we used to, like, just because we weren't as far along the track before, therefore this is going too far. That's what this is saying.
I want back to the 90s, mama.
Yeah.
Please take me back. Yeah, I mean, we of course we completely agree on this. It's totally obvious to the people.
This is just I'm just having some fun.
Stuff is, but we can just laugh at it at this point.
Yes.
I remember, when I went to school, like it was just called, you learned, there wasn't like this thing came in where it changed from like they would have, like a syllabus where they would just teach you Christianity, and that would be a subject, Christianity, and then that was changed to religion, where they would have to then basically give you a superficial overview of like the world religions, something like that. But it is a quite recent thing. It's not some like this is our Christian tradition to do this. It is a very subversive thing that's happened.
Yeah, and I got recently. A stark contrast on that, because when I was in primary school, which in Norway is grade 1 to 7, from 6 years old, I had a very traditional Christian teacher, and she was very strict, etc., etc. So we had all the Christian teachings in primary school because she kind of fudged it a bit, and also because at the time that was, it was still Christianity, not the broader religion. But then when I changed into the middle school, the religion got brought in, and suddenly you had to you got to read a chapter on Buddhism, which is, from a learning perspective, I mean, that I guess that's all right, but just knowing a bit about other things. But there are more important things to teach you, honestly, if you're going to be a good citizen, which is the original thought from, I guess, the classical libertarians who founded a lot of these types of institutions.
I mean, I do have some exposure to it because I know people who work as teachers, and I've looked at some of the curricula, and like the way that religion is taught is basically, it is kind of like the most subversive embodiment of boomer truth, because I mean it's the overview of the world religions. Like they'll go through Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity. Which one am I missing here? Hinduism, yeah.
Hinduism, yes.
And it's it's so superficial.
Oh yeah, it's very superficial.
It's so superficial that you really are just kind of left with this impression that, oh, bro, it's like we're all worshiping the same God, bro. It's like we're just finding different ways up the mountain, bro. It's just the kind of thing. It's just a coat of paint that's put on top of, some kind of inner mystical ideas that we have. It's like it's all this superficial stuff where because and that's a lot of these boomers, a lot of these people have that impression because they legitimately have this extremely superficial understanding of religion and the role that it plays in society. So I think you're actually better off not knowing anything. I mean that
because you're
straight
more
up. Like, you're
open
better off
to
empty and blank.
yeah, you're more open to the reality of it. Like I remember getting into, let's say someone like let's say Evola, who I've featured quite a lot on this channel. He leans, and Gwinon as well, he leans heavily on Buddhism and on Hinduism in a lot of their works. And some of the things, like if you spend more than the 2 pages that get handed to you in middle school about Hinduism, you're getting into some pretty based stuff, but that's never taught to you, So I had to do like a realignment of like where you place the religions in my worldview, sort of, when I realized that, oh my God, I didn't actually learn anything.
No, you didn't learn anything. And I mean, religions are based. It's like, I mean, from our perspective, it doesn't matter which one of these world religions you choose, because a lot of them are over 1,000 years old. They contain so much base stuff. I mean, you could just take your pick of them, but all of that stuff is obscured in the if it doesn't fit into the liberal narrative, then they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, they're certainly based in more capital T truth than anything we've managed to come up with the past 70 years. I'm going to keep on reading here.
Yeah.
So after the small group of people, this is contrary to democratic principles. In a democratic society, one seeks to design fundamental rights that cover all citizens and groups. It violates international conventions for the formulation of political and social regulations on the rights of a small group of people, that is, rights of small group of people override the rights of all other groups in the population. Well, welcome to democracy, my friend. We who signed this petition are seriously concerned about the consequences if these radical proposals are adopted. On behalf of our children and young people, we demand that the Storting say yes to the bisexual model and no to radical gender ideology. We expect that information and teaching disseminated in the country's schools and kindergartens shall be based on professionally sound and scientifically proven knowledge. I disagree. Well, not necessarily, but in current year, I mean, this is the science today.
Yeah, it is.
It's already quote unquote based on scientifically proven knowledge.
Well, if you have, I mean, they look at this sort of LGBTQ history and this kind of like queer theory. That is the type of science, and that is the problem with these. You could talk about the elite theory angle and the sort of top down kind of control here, but there is, to me, there seems like to be another factor that influences this, and is the technocratic mindset and the technocratic style of running a government, where you put the specialists in to deal with their fields. And, okay, who's going to deal with laws regarding LGBTQ stuff? Well, it's the people who have taken the LGBTQ story degrees or the like queer theory degrees, not accounting for the fact that these people are fanatics. Like, they're just like, there are no normal people who will take these degrees. It's just people who are already in that community and who are fanatical about furthering an agenda. And that's just treated as neutral. These are just the specialists that are going to be brought in to make decisions for the rest of society. And like you said, well, this is the science now. So they have no legs to stand on here either.
Number 2, more knowledge and experience must be obtained related to the phenomenon of gender dysphoria. And thorough impact assessments must be carried out regarding gender-correcting treatment before radical decisions are considered. which is more of the same, really. Like, you just want them to come up with some statistics that's gonna placate you. It's not gonna change anything.
Well, I mean, you're giving them like a speed bump here.
Yeah.
This is not going to stop them permanently. Like, you're just giving them some criteria that they can actually solve. Like, on the other way, it's not like, from the other side, they're not giving us criteria that, okay, we can turn back these laws that they've put in if we can prove something. There's nothing like that. I mean, we can overturn gay marriage if we can prove that that's destructive. They never leave anything out like that.
Yeah, no, it's
just moronic to sit and say, well, we need more time and we need to have studies proving that this is okay. It's just beginner's mistakes.
yes. But that being said, that is kind of the reason I also wanted to highlight this thing, because this is maybe the second thing I've seen, like, in Norway, of any sort of anti-movement that seems to be like grassroots, I guess. So if nothing else, as a awareness campaign, getting 20,000 signatures is actually pretty good. But it's not going to change anything, I think.
No, you can slow it down a little bit, slow it down a couple of years, and then they're going to keep pushing it forward. So that's, I'm always, divided. You're sort of happy that there is an engagement there and that there's some public awareness at the same time. Like, these arguments aren't, dialectically, they're useless. So it is like this kind of sensible centrist area where, I mean, that would be funny if we could do that at some point, that these sort of Norwegian sensible centrist commentary things. I mean, I would just do a stream, but I would just be laughing at these people nonstop, like we're doing here. Like, these sort of people like Kjetil Rollnes, Espen Goffing. Like, these people who are like these are quote unquote.
I follow Rollnes actually, because once in a blue moon, I what's the saying? It's broken clock is right twice a day. He gets a good hit, but then he like falls back into like trying to be the smartest person in the room, and through that sort of loses his credibility, I feel, because he's playing to I'm the real classical liberal here, and
Yes. It is. I mean, they're trying, but they're it's completely futile from when they come from that point of view, and then that is kind of the price of admission. But they are playing against the house, in a sense. Like, the house is just going to win in the end.
Yeah, the house.
You can win.
Wins.
You can play the slot machine, and you can win a couple of times, and you feel like you're making progress. But ultimately, I mean, over time, you're going to lose all your money. And I feel like it's the same thing with these commentators, is that they're going to lose this fight. And I don't know if like they've been doing it for a long time too. And I wonder if like they're genuinely that deluded, or they're just like trying to hold on to the attention or something. Because at some point they must have thought that this is not going. Like, I'm winning the debates here. I'm winning the debates. I'm getting all these dunks in, and I'm really presenting good arguments.
Nothing is happening.
Things are just going in the other direction.
Yeah,
nothing's happening here. I mean, I'm winning in the marketplace of ideas, but it's like the game is rigged.
Yeah, that's not where you enact change, unfortunately. So that was all I had on the content side. If anyone have any questions, I'm not going to force you to stay, Luddick, but I can stick around for a couple of more minutes to just.
I can stick around for a few questions. But we've been going for 2 hours actually. It ended up being longer than I thought, but it was a fun. It was a fun stream, impromptu.
I was like, I just read these things and I got mad, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to talk about it while it's fresh in my mind. And I figured since you had been talking about this, you probably had some ammo as well.
Yeah, I had some in the chamber. It's nice. I didn't have to wait like two weeks or like 4 weeks to do one on this. So
we can probably go more in depth later if you want to. But this was just a nice fun opportunity.
Rundown there.
Let's see if I can bring up this funny image I saw earlier. It was making the rounds, which is there's actually a set of 2 images, I think. Can I put this up? I am not good with OBS. I've learned that today. Image. Transform. Center on screen. Okay, this isn't working. Why am I moving the... Okay, delete this. Yes, here we go.
Oh, this is a
my
funny
God.
image.
Yeah. I am not doing well. Okay, let me just transform bit to screen. Here we go. Now, it might not be very visible, but it's on. I'm going to figure this out until next time. But there was 2 images. So there's this one, and then there's, let's see. There's this one. It's the duality of man.
Well, it is a tough tough time to be alive for sure. I did think about this kind of stuff as a sort of topic that it's a little bit of this kind of segue, but I was watching the last Academic Agent stream on James Lindsay. He is a little bit connected to this because he is one of the I imagine that the people who are opposing this trans stuff have probably read James Lindsay because they're using a lot of the same arguments. But then under the like in the comment section, there was this guy commenting about, academic agent, why haven't you you're associating with people who are homosexuals and transvestites, and why aren't you disciplining your own constituents like this? And they ended up with this complete shit posty, like 50 replies in the comments.
Oh wow.
But the guy basically wanted to, we should hit a much more of like a hardline absolutist Christian ethic, and then try to exclude all of these kind of what you would call like these deviant people from the dissident movement, and that's what you're getting to with this kind of like when I looked at this picture, because it's a tough balancing act here to figure out how we're going to sort of who's going to be tolerated and who's not going to be tolerated in the movement. Yes. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Walrus.
My thought is similar to yours, that it's difficult, and it's something I have spent a lot of time thinking about as well. Because on the surface level, you would think that, someone that is gay in like a right-wing movement seems like a bit of a paradox. But I don't think it is really. And it comes down to... It comes down a little bit to the friend-enemy distinction on one hand, in that as long as you understand the good and the bad and friend good, enemy bad thing, everything else in the current state is irrelevant. And the other one is the silliest way I can say it is that... Yeah, we're past 2 hours. I don't care. Is the saying that you can be gay, just don't be a faggot about it, which is basically what a lot of this, global homogeneity LGBT movement stuff is. It's not necessarily about homosexuality as a practice and as a expression for men. It is about far deeper, darker. What
I came to think about today in terms of defining it is that that movement is basically trying to create a coalition by just appealing to the worst aspects of human beings, at least from our perspective.
Yeah.
So you start with, you start with the sexual revolution, where they're appealing to the vice of like, okay, well, you want to sleep around and you want to get divorced and just to have a new girlfriend every week. And so they get people on their side for that. And then they're going with these sort of more deviant stuff, like with the LGBTQ later. And like they go from the collectivist stuff to the liberalism, where it's like you appeal to their selfishness and just greed and wanting to make more money and break away from the community. And now they're basically just appealing to people's sensitivity, to the point that, you get the right to never be insulted and to never to never face any difficulties. Like that's what they're appealing to, like people's absolute weakness, to create a coalition around it. Whereas our movement, I think, has to be the exact opposite. Like we were trying to appeal to heroism,
Yeah.
or to people's need to have like meaning in their lives, like genuine, authentic meaning and heroism. And that will just take anybody who's interested in that.
At this point, I think we have to. And then, you know, it's one of those. It's one of those things that you can argue about the finer. It's kind of like it feels a little bit like the I've been railing against libertarians, and it's like you can argue about the finer points of whether or not recreational nukes are okay when you know when you're in power and the perfect libertarian utopia has been established. Then we can talk about that. But as it stands now, there's just no point in spending energy on it. That's what I'm seeing. Um, and you can say that you need to morally police harder, and that might be true. It's a difficult topic, and it's something that's gonna have to be dealt with at some point. But
yeah, we'll get there. We'll figure out some way to.
And I will say, you know, that might be something that we're coming back to regarding the statistics we talked about here. I think there's a difference between gay men and gay women in that sense. The statistics were saying that a lot of the transsexuals or the transitioning youths were women, and I think the homosexual man, so to speak, has a deeper, maybe more true in some sense, connection to some things. But I'm way out of line. So
No, I totally see what you mean, and we get to make that distinction because we believe gender exists, right?
yeah,
So we believe like sexes are real. So like a sort of male kind of homosexual, that's something different than like a female with the mental issue.
right.
So like you know, like they'll have some face like, oh well, I made out with a girl in high school or something, but it's
Yeah,
really not the
there's a
same
difference
thing at
between,
all
you
in
know,
my view.
the fabulous artist, quote unquote, and the woman who experimented in college, as you said.
Yeah. And the thing is that, I mean, a lot of these high performance people have a tendency of being gay, unfortunately. I mean, you see it a lot with, you know, like people like Peter Thiel and a lot of these investors, a lot of the, you see it a lot in society now. Like a lot of these top people are gay men, and it gives them, you know, a lot of, it gives them some advantages in the terms that they, you know, if they don't have kids, they can focus all their energy on the political project.
Yeah, and
And the second
that's
thing,
something that I know academic agents has talked about. He defined them as like eunuchs, like the
yeah,
people who live only for the cause.
but they can do that, and they also have access to all male spaces. I mean, but they could really sort of hone that masculine instinct. Uh,
Mongolian Doggerland says is the fabulous artist D. I mean, I guess he could be. I don't know him well enough to comment on that.
yeah,
I
I
will
think
say
he's sort of
that
like
I
his
have
warrior
a sort of
poet type.
I have a fondness for his stereotypical sort of British snootiness, and his rants on things like railing against showers as opposed to taking baths, etc. But that's besides the point. I was just making a general archetype, not necessarily referring to anyone specific. So in a sense, I see Nordanel says that it seems to return to the 90s. I mean, maybe on the surface, but I think there's a deeper, it goes deeper, and there's a possibility that, you know, if the answer is in the end that, oh, we're going to return to, somehow, we're going to end up back at basically Christianity as the state religion heavily enforced and homosexuality is banned. Well, I mean, society managed to function for quite a long time with that rule, and it seems like the homosexuals, in some way at least, got by. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think like in Western countries, you've had these types of regimes, but I don't know how strict the enforcement was. It's been
No, and
my
that
understanding
that's
that it's not
that's
been very strictly enforced.
yeah, that's an interesting topic because it's I think the when the religions, and that's the thing, when I'm saying like the you can be gay but not be be an asshole about it. Um, there's a difference between the act, well, and that's I guess where the Christians would argue and probably dunk on me, but there feels like there's a difference between the act of homosexuality and the societal impact of homosexuality. That the gay quote unquote can spread um, somehow. And I mean that in terms of like degeneracy and sin can spread.
Yeah, it is. It is contagious, and it's. I mean, it's a very difficult issue to deal with. But I mean, I do hear this sentiment in a lot of dissident right circles that they seem like they want some type of like white Sharia law. Uh, but I think that this concept is almost a little bit foreign in a European setting, and especially in like this kind of northern sphere, Scandinavian sphere. I don't think there's ever been like that type of rule set here, where there's like this super strict enforcement of social rules. In that sense, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone can correct me
Maybe.
on it. But yeah,
But yeah, my chief concern is always going to be the social enforcement. And I say Vingel says that even Oswald mostly was for protecting the right to do pretty much whatever you want behind closed doors, but not in public. And I think the first step is the social enforcement. You have to clamp down on all of this. Um, and I don't think that starting with homosexual men is the right. You know, there's a lot of enemies before we end up there. So I just feel like it's
yeah.
again
I
it's
mean, I
hard
think about
to.
freedom of association, and that
Yeah,
sounds like this kind of lulbert stuff. But no, I don't think they have a monopoly on that.
no,
It seems like a lot of them don't even care about it. But
no,
like
it can be
actually, freedom
freedom
of
of
association.
association in the you know, the true sense where the Amish can build their own communities and you know.
Yeah, I
uh,
think that's what we need, a kind of Israel model
yeah,
where like people can just live in these trad communities, and it's encouraged and maybe even subsidized, that they can live these kind of Luddite lifestyles, and they can have a lot of kids, and we could have above replacement level birth rates. So that problem is solved by just encouraging people to live these kind of more like these Amish type lifestyles.
yeah.
I think Israel has a similar solution to that, where they have, I don't know the exact names of these communities, but like they have these kind of agrarian traditional communes,
Yeah.
and that's why they have a birth rate at 3.00. It's not because the people in the big cities are having a lot of kids, but because the women who are living in these more agrarian communities have maybe 7, 8 kids.
Yes. But that's a rabbit hole, and I'm probably making a lot of enemies now. So I'll look for another question. Mongolian
Yeah,
Doggerland
that's right.
said,
It's the kibbutz. This is beer Carl there. Fantastic. That's what I was looking for.
yeah, yeah. Mongolian Doggerland says, Vikings equals Vikings. It starts as an Afro-American conspiracy theory, but there are multiple examples of that sort of thing ending up in British curricula. In the dark corners, I have noted gay opping in the 1970s, Pakistani, along the lines of the Windrush myths. That's interesting. And more melanated corners, I've noticed Halfdan Swati being mentioned as a hidden black history. That sounds like nonsense. Like all of this, I don't. Maybe get traction somewhere, but unless that's gonna get introduced in schools, I. No.
I don't know. I just think it's funny, honestly. I mean, I would have probably been more insulted in the past, but it's like we talked about with these sort of these kind of these slurs that they use against like Norwegian whites, so it's sort of potato fishball stuff. Or yeah, that they say like the original Vikings were Numbian, like Somalian Africans. I just laugh at it. I just think it's funny.
It is
They're
funny because it feels so strange. that weird like Black Israelite movement is also very interesting. That's also for a good laugh if you want to look into that. And those
Yeah.
people are in a strange way very based. um. So yeah, the duality hits me hard. Any commentary on the truck
Je-
convoys? Yeah, we can give some commentary on the truck convoys, I guess. I don't have much. It's hard with these things because probably everything has already been said. But I'm at the point, philosophically, metaphorically, in Minecraft, that the only way that this is going to lead to some real meaningful change is if this ends with truckers in Parliament writing new laws and establishing a new government. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I was at least happy with the effort. I was quite positive to it when I saw it. What do you think about the Norwegian coverage of that in the media?
Um, Most of the images I've seen are those where they have like Confederate flags or like the one like creasy mid-century German flag that you see someone has just pulled out of the box for this specific occasion. Um, without going any further into that, but it's been covering in the terms of like they've been covering it, but the imagery they use are very like they're using the specific Jan 6 evoking imagery. I feel.
Yeah, I don't know if it's working. Have you talked to any normies about that?
No, I haven't actually. I haven't had the chance to, because Ukraine
You know,
has supplanted it in like discussions.
yeah, no, I mean, I thought for a while that the Norwegian media was just not going to cover it because they really hesitated. I mean, the alt media was on it immediately about
Yeah,
this trucker
the
convoy
mainstream took
protest,
a
but
long time.
they I think they waited like 4 days into it before they actually did any coverage at all.
The participant of the convoy copy in Helsinki interviewed said that he doesn't support anything besides going into a sauna in the middle of Main Street. um, let's see here. It's already happened in England. Yeah, that's why we have to do something about this somehow. Um, or at least on a personal level, I have to do something about this before it's too late. And I don't know what. Well, I mean, there are private school options that are to some extent gonna be viable. I think to the pause entering the schools. But I think we're running out of steam here, so
Yeah.
I think we're going to end the stream here. Thank you for joining us and listening. Thank you for Luddic Path for showing up on such a short notice and indulging
Well, it's my pleasure.
my whims. If you want to talk more with us or other like-minded people, I have linked the Matrix channel in the description. If not, I'll see you next time I stream. And until then, have a good night and a good rest of your weekend.